Well, I did not expect this to happen on Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. This is going to be a completely different video for me today, guys. I'm not talking about a specific movie here. This is going to kind of be unhinged, raw, unscripted thoughts on something that I never really thought I would talk about. Years ago, back in 2018, I did a video about the craziest news ever that Smallville star Allison Mack was part of a sex cult and was being sentenced to jail and serving prison time for her role in that cult. And now that she is apparently out of jail, which I had no idea, and me being the massive Smallville fan that I am, I kind of want to talk about something that has been happening lately, not just with the podcast I'm about to talk about, but with other people's podcasts as well, now that she is out of prison and on probation. And you guys know me, I love Smallville. Smallville's probably my favorite TV show of all time. I think it's the best superhero show of all time, and I love everybody that's involved except for Allison Mack now because, wow, holy shit. Like, saying she did bad things in real life doesn't even encompass what she did. Like, it's beyond bad. It's vile and evil. Doing this video as a response to a latest podcast episode from a Smallville actor, I understand that my viewpoint on this might be contradictory because when I say that I don't really want to give people like that a platform, this video, if it takes off and, does views, I hope it does, but, if it doesn't, fine, then yeah, I'm probably driving people to that podcast episode and continuing to enable her to have a platform, when that's not something I really necessarily want to do, but here we are. She was on Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. So, listen, I love Rosenbaum. I think Rosenbaum is the best Lex Luthor there has ever been on screen. I think he's a really fun guy and really funny guy, especially when you watch videos of him at cons. Like, the poor other cast members of Smallville, other than Tom Welling, can't get a single goddamn word in because he's just having the time of his life with Tom Welling. But you can also see the softer side of Michael Rosenbaum on his celebrity podcast called Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. He also has another podcast called Talkville. It's a Smallville rewatch podcast with Tom Welling, which, quite frankly, kind of sucks because Michael Rosenbaum kind of just goes full grifter mode on that. He doesn't really like the episodes, and I'm fully convinced that he doesn't watch the episodes, and he just kind of nitpicks everything, and that's why I don't really like it. I kind of really fell off the bandwagon on that. I tune in here every once in a while. Like, I thought the one for Descent was really good because they're on season 7 now, but he might not even return to do the rest of the series because he's not in seasons 8, 9, and 10, which is stupid. Just watch it and do the podcast, man. Please. We're here talking about his other podcast. As I mentioned, the name of it is Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, and it's a fantastic podcast. I love listening to Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. It's a celebrity podcast where he really just tries to get to know what makes a person tick. It's never like an interrogation, and he's never trying to pry information. He knows what lines not to cross and the boundaries that need to be in place. Until now, at least until this episode. This episode kind of broke everything. And this is easily the worst episode of Inside of You that I have listened to. I don't think there's a bad episode of Inside of You. There's some boring ones, like I think Bonnie Wright from, the Harry Potter series. I thought that was a boring episode. I don't think it was bad, but this one was bad. And there's a multitude of reasons as to why. I mean, first and foremost, you have Allison Mack on your podcast, the one cast member from the show that you worked on. You're giving her a platform now. An actual criminal who did vile things that psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and physically fucked over a whole bunch of people, and now you're having her on, just doesn't seem like the best idea, in my opinion. That's the biggest problem with the whole thing. What I want to go off of with that is that this just feels like it's an episode designed to really just rake in the dollars and the numbers that Rosenbaum wants for his podcast, and it is clearly doing the numbers. I think it's the highest rated episode, highest viewed episode of this podcast that I have seen to date, and to date, it is probably the most listened to because everybody wants to get in and see what all this huge sex cult called NXIVM that Allison Mack was involved in was actually about. The other problem here is that you really don't find out anything about the inner workings of this thing. Allison Mack, I'm just kind of stumbling over words, to be honest with you, because again, like, we shouldn't be giving somebody like this a platform, and it's not just Rosenbaum that's the problem. I think that out of the two podcasts that she's done where she has explained her experience and everything that happens, this is easily the more tame of them. I am not defending this episode at all, though, and I am not defending any perpetrators from this cult at all. As I said, I'm probably giving her a platform as much as I don't want to, just by doing this video, and that does make me a little bit sick, but it's just something I couldn't get off my mind, and that's the reason why I'm really doing this video. But I mean, out of the two podcasts, like, she's done another 7-part podcast that is being released weekly that's even in more detail, which is worse in my opinion, and there are so many takeaways from her answers on the Rosenbaum podcast, which is going to be the focus of this video. I will give Michael Rosenbaum credit where credit is due. It is not an interrogation. He is not the FBI knocking at her door requesting as much information as he can. He's not there to pry. He literally says at the end, he says, I'm just trying to have a conversation with somebody, and okay, I get that. I just wish it was somebody else you were having a conversation with. And what also makes this problematic, though, too, is that you're talking to somebody who had such high power in this big NXIVM cult thing, and you've already had other victims on your podcast that were part of NXIVM that I mean, I don't know if they were, psychologically or emotionally abused by Allison Mack. But the thing is that you've had members of NXIVM who luckily got out once they realized what the fuck this thing actually was, that were on your podcast, and now you bring Allison Mack on in a way that kind of makes her look apologetic and sympathetic, and now you're kind of making the victims look like idiots. I don't really like that category. Obviously, like, I didn't even want to listen to this thing, but, the fact that it was Allison Mack, I was like, oh, great. I mean, okay, well, let me just listen to it. Just to spike my curiosity, because I was just curious about it. So I listened to the whole thing, and yeah, like I said, it's probably the worst episode of the entire podcast. For one, other than the reasons I've explained already about platforming her and trying to make her look sympathetic, and, well, it seems like Rosenbaum's just doing this for monetary reasons, I feel like she just gave bullshit answers to everything. Like, that's kind of how I feel. Like, I get that she is under probation. She's essentially under an NDA where she can't say much about anything. I feel like that's maybe the problem, but if she's also doing a 7-part podcast on another platform, how come she can, if she can talk about everything on there, how come she can't talk about everything on here? That's kind of the strange part for me here. And listening to some of her answers, I was like, I don't think any of this is true. Like, for instance, one question, I forget what context it was that Rosenbaum asked. I think it was something to do with the branding. And she said, nope, wasn't my idea. Nope, those were not my initials, which I think is a bold-faced lie, because she previously stated that, yeah, it was my idea. And, yeah, those were her initials. So, is she saying false things to save face? Also, her viewpoints of inherently good people and inherently bad people was kind of conflicting, if you ask me. I get where she's coming from, but I don't think that she's the one that should be talking about that. I mean, there's probably people that she interacted with in prison that probably did a way less serious things than her. Regardless, they still committed a crime. I mean, when you look at it, she got sentenced to 3 years, which you can look at all this online. I'm not going to go into the backstory of this, but essentially, to make a long story short, she got arrested because she was a high-ranking member of this self-help group that ended up being a sex cult, but they marketed themselves as a self-help group. She was a big recruiter. She got a lot of people involved in it. She tried to even recruit Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling, her Smallville castmates, and they rightfully said no. Kristen Kruk was a part of NXIVM as well, but got out before shit got bad, and she realized that it got bad. There's articles and other podcasts that says Kristen got her into it. I highly doubt that, because interacting briefly with Kristen Kruk at a convention, she doesn't seem like the type of person that probably would introduce Allison Mack to something like this. It seems like it would be vice versa. I don't really know if she should be talking about good people versus bad people, or like if you do something bad, that doesn't make you a bad person. Does it though? That's the thing. And is she the one that should be talking about this? I mean, you're the one that we've had TMZ videos after that whole contextual thing that I just gave you, that very brief context, where it's like the leader, Keith Raniere, has been arrested, and there's videos of you saying, we gotta go get him, because you're such a high-ranking member, and there's more things coming out. Like, for instance, I'm not going to name the actress, but there was this whole thing where there was this actress that was a part of NXIVM that actually really got in deep, couldn't get out. Allison Mack may have had a role to do with that, and she's been defending Keith Raniere forever. She entered into a partnership or even an illegal marriage with Allison Mack so that she could retain her citizenship, only to find out later that the entire marriage was a sham. This is the type of people that are in this cult once they get in really deep. It's essentially Epstein's Island, and Keith Raniere is essentially Epstein or Donald Trump. You can essentially equate those two people to Keith Raniere, and Keith Raniere to those two people. When you read about it and when you watch stuff like The Vow on HBO Max, shit gets crazy. They really know like how to market themselves. I thought she did a good job at, marketing how this whole thing worked and how she got involved in it. I will give her credit for that, because she could talk about that. That sounded like truth. It didn't sound like a bunch of fluff. All the other shit, it just sounded all made up, because she was like, I gotta go on a podcast, I gotta talk about this, but like, I'm also under probation, I'm under an NDA, like, what can I say? Let me just make up some bullshit. And I feel like Rosenbaum kind of realized, not to defend him, because I do think it is a massive mistake that he did this episode in the first place, but I feel like he realized about like halfway through, just based on his reactions, like just all the yeah, like when he was doing that and just some of his facial reactions, he was like, maybe this was a bad idea. At the end of the video, he goes on to claim, he's like, I know I'm gonna get criticized for it. He's like, but I don't give a shit. But if you have that viewpoint or that thought process, why even bother bringing her on? if you know that you're probably gonna get criticized for it, that's another big issue I have with this whole thing. The whole thing just feels very grimy and dirty and just out of touch. I don't know if tone deaf is necessarily the right word, but just wrong. Another big part too of it is that it just feels like it's too soon. I had no idea this girl was even out of jail. I knew she had gotten sentenced and that she was serving 3 years, which she says in the video she would have gotten sentenced to 16 or 22, which she probably should have got that, or 25 to life, if you ask me. I mean, if that evil, vile son of a bitch that was the ringleader of this whole thing got 120 years, which is a life sentence. I mean, you're not living 120 years in prison when you're already 40-something. You're going to die before then. Thank God. Go to hell, Keith Raniere. Yeah, like, you would think with the initiation process, when you read about it more and you look into this thing a lot more, you would probably get more than 3 years, and you would probably serve more than 1 year and 9 months with probation. It doesn't really track for me, but I mean, like I was saying, I was like, I feel like Rosenbaum kind of realized that like this was kind of a bad decision midway through. And again, I'm not defending him, because we shouldn't be giving people like this platforms. Well, or her, I don't mind him. Content creators like Rosenbaum that do podcasts, you're gonna slip up every once in a while. Like, this could be a massive mistake, me making this video and me talking about it. Yeah, and if it is, I'll take this thing down. I have no problem taking it down, and if people are just like, no, probably very tone deaf for you to make a video about it, sure, I'll admit it. I'll own that L. I'll remove it. Whatever. What also struck me, too, is that she's in prison reform now. She's teaching prison reform because she wants to teach other people about how to, like, survive in the world once you get out of prison. And it just comes across as gross. Like, why are you doing this? I'm happy that... I mean, I shouldn't even say that I'm happy, because I'm not. Like, good for you, I guess, that you are starting to try to figure out your life, but are you just gonna use these platforms eventually and then just go back to doing your criminal, shady Spectre shit on the side? And going back to a point that I was gonna make, actually, because I know there's been really weird segues into this video, but a point I was gonna make where I was saying it's too soon to bring somebody like this on, especially when you have victims of Nexium on your podcast already. It's not a good look. But regardless, she's what, a year, 9 months removed from prison? Like, it's like making the Moana live action movie 10 years after the original movie came out. It's too soon. Or take the movie Patriots Day, for instance. I think there was enough time that passed between 2013 to 2017 when that movie came out about the Boston Marathon bombings. Could you imagine in World War II if, like, the war ended in 1945, the day it ended in 1945, if the next day a film crew was like, yeah, we're going to film a movie in 12 days and then we're going to release it, like, next month about the war and the Holocaust and all the concentration camps, and you're going to see all the nitty-gritty stuff that the leaders of the Nazi regime did. And it's not too soon, right, guys? Yeah, imagine it that way. Which, speaking of, apparently she's married to a Nazi skinhead, which is a big red flag to me, that she's like, yeah, you're telling the truth, but you're not. If you're married to a Nazi skinhead, no, you're not telling the truth. Who she claims is reformed, he claims he's reformed. The entire story, the backstory for him, sounds made up. It just sounds like she watched American History X literally right before she got on this podcast and was like, I'm gonna paint my husband up to be Edward Norton from American History X. It's literally the same exact goddamn thing. Like, yeah, how can you trust somebody when she says she marries someone who once had a swastika tattooed on his neck? None of her answers, other than, like, her saying, like, when she gets into the nitty-gritty where she's literally going into details about what could have happened if she didn't cooperate with law enforcement. When she's in those details, that's when the episode is at its best, and I don't even want to say that it's good then, but you can tell she's lying through her teeth the whole time, and it's just a vile, sick representation of someone that wants to feel sympathetic, like wants to actually express her gratitude and sorrow to the victims. But you can't do that on a podcast, and you can't just come on after you get out of prison and be like, yeah, like, this is what it was. This is the inner workings of it. This is how evil he was. But I wasn't that bad, was I? That's how she comes across. I don't know. For some reason, I just had to get this off my chest. I don't want to platform her. I don't want to give her more attention. I don't want to give this episode more attention, even though if this video does take off, it'll probably drive viewers to that video and that specific episode of Rosenbaum's podcast. I love the guy. There is some unfair criticism, mostly because he is friends with James Gunn, so you're going to have all those Gunn detractors coming after him and being like, well, this is what you get for me. Okay, no, that's not valid criticism, guys. I'm sorry. But I think what I discussed in this video is fair and valid criticism for him. She literally makes herself out to be a victim, and maybe she was, but she's not sympathetic towards anybody. She kind of makes herself out to be the good guy in the entire situation. It's very clear Rosenbaum did this for monetary gain and viewership gain. It's not the best idea. I wouldn't even say the best idea. I would say this is a horrible idea in the first place, and it's easily the worst episode of the podcast. And even if this was something minor, like if she had committed a crime that was minor, which she didn't, She got charged for sex trafficking and racketeering, which is a massive criminal record there. Even then, it would feel like desperation. I mean, you have people like Sarah Edmondson on here, and you talked about how Allison Mack was a totally different person. Like, I really did not think that this episode would ever come to fruition after that story that he tells in that episode. The clip will be right here for that episode.
You always think, come on, how can someone get brainwashed? Well, you know, working with, and I haven't really talked about this, but like working with Allison and seeing her grow up. And, you know, I never really hung out with her, maybe a couple cast dinners and, you know, directed her and she was really sweet. And,
Yeah,
you know,
she
she was always really nice, needed attention. Who doesn't? I know I do. And, you know, there were certain things. But you ask yourself, how does someone just completely, it's almost like you're leaving your skin somewhere and I can't explain it because knowing Allison for those years and just seeing her on set and, but you know, you never imagine in a million years. That's why I think I neglected sort of, to read about it or really, it's like, this can't be, there's gotta be something, but you probably saw her change.
I did.
And when you first met her, because, you know, it's still hard for me to believe. I mean, there was an incident at my house years later. Still, I don't know if I don't think I was on Smallville, but she and a friend of hers and this guy said, hey, I haven't talked to you forever. We want to stop by. And I hadn't seen her. And they walked in the house and it was almost like I just remember I'm not blowing this out of proportion. I'm not exaggerating at all. I remember because my friend Ethan was here. And I remember we just kind of go, and by the way, I didn't even know about this next to him or anything. At this point, I mean, I remember on set once, she came and she's like, hey, you should take this class. It's really cool and blah, blah. And I remember I said to Tom, sounds like a cult. I don't know. And we kind of laughed, but we never thought, oh, it's like, you know, I'm sure it's like people are looking for things. We never did it. But but after that, you know, we never really heard about it. That was what she was doing and I never really thought about it. So years later, I don't know what year this is. I have to go back and I could probably figure it out. But I think it was after Smallville. She's in the vicinity. She comes over to the house and she walks in and she walked in. She was a different person. She walked in like she owned my house. Like literally she owned my home. She walked in with her friends and they walked into the kitchen. I was like, hey, she was like, hey, how are you? And then walked into my kitchen, started bringing out pots and pans and started cooking. I go, what are you guys doing? My friend Ethan's like, what? It's like, we're hungry. We're hungry. We're gonna, I remember that like it was yesterday. I got to talk to Ethan because then I said, after a while, I just felt uncomfortable. I was like, well, hey guys, you know, like that's it. Come on, let's, and I kind of asked them like, hey, you might want to leave soon. And I was kind of be nice. The guy turned almost violent. I mean, he was violent. Like
Who was he?
I can't remember what his name. I don't, because I didn't care. I just was like, who the fuck is this guy? Very angry and like, I think he was on something. He was like, and he just started kind of cursing at me and Ethan. I was like, fuck you. I'm like, all right, you know what, buddy? I don't know what this is about. You just come in, you start cooking in my house. You guys don't even say that. Why don't you guys just go? Well, I'd actually like you to get the fuck out of my house. That's what I said. And I remember I was waiting for Allison to sort of jump in and say, I'm so sorry. No, he doesn't mean this. There was nothing. It was just like, it was almost like they were zombies. That's how I remember. I'll never forget it. And I'm not saying that this has anything to do with it. Next thing has anything to do with it. But when they left, I looked at Ethan and our hearts were racing. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm disgusted. I don't, and I remember I got a text maybe a few days later. Oh, sorry about the other night or something.
That's bizarre.
But I'm just telling you that I don't know where it came from. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was a bad night. But it was years after I had seen her. I hadn't seen her for a long time. So I think what I'm saying is, did you, when you first met her to the time all this shit went down, what was that transformation like? What was that sort of relationship?
I mean, I'm going to backtrack for 1 sec because you said something about brainwashing, and it's a word that people, either you're of the mind of like, we're all brainwashed. It's just another word is indoctrinated. We're indoctrinated by society, by our parents to believe certain things. commercials indoctrinate us. It's not a matter of whether we're brainwashed or not, just how brainwashed are you?
Right.
That's one belief, right?
Right.
I didn't understand how this worked until I left. Quick plug for a book that really helped me understand. It's called Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan. And it explains how in a seminar you can be indoctrinated, especially in 3 days. That's why by day 3, they had me. Their hooks were in me. And it goes step by step. And I'm not an expert. I can't even begin to try to explain what he explains in this book. But if people want to understand better, that happens. But for somebody like Allison, and keep in mind, I was there for some things. I wasn't there for other things. I'm kind of hypothesizing what happened with her, And I also don't want to bring any more hurt on her and her family. I want her to be better. I want her to wake up. And I've heard, by the way, that she has, which is great.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of hoping. I was hoping that because I don't know anything other than I just remember her as a sweet girl. And I hope that I just kept hoping I was wrong or people were wrong, and I just don't know how it happened. So continue. Sorry.
You know what? What I remember is from that first gymnast training, and I'd met her casually through our group of friends, at a bar, at a party. Super outgoing, great dancer. I remember thinking her style was really great.
Great singer.
Really friendly. Very. I liked how she was very touchy. Lots of hugs. And I really liked her a lot. And after that first training, I think because she wasn't working the next day, she got on the plane and went back to Albany to meet Keith after 2 days. And some people have said it was the private jet. I don't know. So it's a rumor. Is it private jet or either way, she got on the plane, went back, met Keith, and that video footage that you see in the vow of them meeting at volleyball. I've never seen that. I didn't even know that footage existed. When I watched that 2 weeks ago, I was like, holy shit. I mean, people didn't normally meet Keith until you'd had to take a minimum 16-day. So the fact that they let, Allison into that world, and she felt probably very special to get special access to the Vanguard. I think it's all things that many of us that were our actors, wanting to feel important, feel special, get attention. I think she got all that, and
that was after 2 days.
Yeah, it was a 3-day training in Vancouver, and she flew back and met him, and I'm sure I don't know about you, but I felt nauseous. Got chills when I saw that video, how he was looking at her and what he said to her, and he was fucking with her mind, and bearing into her soul with his eyes, you could just see the whole history unfold.
After that, would you even expect him to reach out to her? So it is kind of strange that this thing came to fruition and that she is getting a platform. And unfortunately, that's the sad part, because now she's making herself out to be the good guy. And that's what doing an episode like Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum that has a guest like Allison Mack is going to do. And that's why I don't think it's going to ruin Rosenbaum's reputation. I don't think it's going to ruin the podcast whatsoever. It's still a great podcast. I love listening to it all the time, but it's just not the episode that I would have done. I wouldn't have done it at any point down the road, and I think it's just something that he needs to take into account when he's bringing on celebrity guests to talk on this podcast in the future. I get it. He's open to criticism. He's like, I know I'm going to get criticized for it, but I don't give a shit. Okay, cool, Rosenbaum. I love you, but you have to understand that this was a bad mistake. So what is your take on this whole thing? Let me know in the comments below. I'll leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I will see you at the movies somewhere.